Department of Law, Corporation Counsel. I'm Finance Chair, Counselor Rudd. Kristen Smith, Joe Barry from the department, President Hudson, Counselor Bay, Counselor Thompson, and it looks like Counselor Green and Counselor Allen will be back in a moment.
Okay.
But with that, we've been asking everybody for what the biggest accomplishment of the current fiscal year has been and what your biggest goal for the proposed budget has been. Or will be, is, whatever it is. Goals and accomplishments.
Well, it's hard to boil down our accomplishments into just one category because the breadth of what we do. I mean, we handle a wide variety of matters for the city, from drafting contracts to handling all the litigation, processing all the claims against the city, processing all the Freedom of Information Law requests. So,
I know, but you could be specific to the diversity of victories that you've celebrated over the last year.
Of course. So, actually, a couple things come to mind. One is the FOIL process, actually. And I was going to highlight that for you. A year ago, it was a job that was done by one paralegal who was drowning in paper and couldn't get it all done, and we were chronically behind. And we have a new person in that position, and we partnered with the I-team to try to streamline the process, map out the process, figure out where the inefficiencies were, and it was very successful to the point where the person who was doing that job had capacity to do other things. So we were able to make her job into a joint position where she handled FOILs as well as served as a paralegal for one of our attorneys. So that was really a case of really making our work more efficient. Now, that's not sort of when you think about what the law department does, you think about us being in court defending the city and drafting contracts, but that Freedom of Information Law work is an important thing that we do as well. So that was definitely a success for us. You hear about the cases in the news that, go to trial, but there's many, many, many cases that you never hear about because they're handled because they come in, we defend them aggressively, and they go away. And so all of them are successes for us. Thanks, Joe. It's been a very busy year because there's been a number of very, very important contracts that we've had to negotiate, not just boilerplate items, not just, buying paper. For example, we negotiated the contract with National Grid to purchase the streetlights. That was signed by the mayor about a week ago. It's on the desk of the National Grid executives this week, and we anticipate that being signed any day now. And we also were able to negotiate a temporary use agreement with Grid so that even before the final deal is approved by the Public Service Commission, we'll be able to get out and start installing the new LED fixtures within the month of April, hopefully. So that was a very big contract. Took months and months of time at the table with National Grid. Rezone will be coming to your desk this year, and that's something that the law department's been very much involved in. And, as well as, other contracts that I guess we can't count as an accomplishment yet, but in terms of the smart cities area surge, there's a number of contracts that we're working on that are keeping us very busy. I guess I didn't really talk about goals, but...
well, the rezone, I think, was one goal.
One goal, yeah, one goal. This is more of an administrative goal, but I'd like to be able to better track the work that our department does. I'd like to be able to have more precise metrics on the work that we're doing. Last year, we came to you asking for funds to purchase a law case management system that would track that work, and you approved that. We did purchase the system, and where is that coming from? Oh, we can ignore that. We purchased the software, and it's being customized currently, and we will be rolling it out to our attorneys and our paralegals in July. So I think the goal for this year is to fully implement that software so that next year when we come to you, we'll have really precise metrics on the number of matters that we've handled, the types of matters. I mean, we do give you those numbers, but those are more of an approximation.
I went back and watched last year's hearing last night. So time in housing court, because of the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication, I assume it hasn't changed yet since nothing has really happened, but how do you see it now?
Right. Well, I've been working really closely with Leah on, bringing the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication up online. So it's not quite accurate to say nothing has happened because there's been a lot going on to get it going. But our work wasn't impacted this year because it didn't come online yet. But it's going to begin in April. I think that we will still have the approximately same number of matters in court because there will still be the most non-compliant parties whose behaviors aren't going to be, affected by the BAA. They will be taken through that process, but we anticipate a continued non-compliance. So the good news is that we will have more time to focus on those cases, and the less complex or the more routine cases will be funneled through the BAA. So it will just allow us to be more effective, I think, but I don't see the numbers going down. One area that I'm hoping that we'll have more time to focus on because of having some of the work taken away by the BAA is zombie properties. So those are properties that, are being owned by lenders who have foreclosed on the property and are just sitting on the property and not maintaining it. They have an obligation under state law to maintain the property, to inspect the property, to register the property, and we don't have great compliance in the city on that. So my plan is that one of the attorneys who is currently in housing court can spend more time enforcing the zombie legislation. In fact, we brought our first complaint just last week or the week before on a property that has been sitting vacant, and we're going to be pursuing that. There's substantial fines that are associated with that, and these types of cases tend to get the attention of the lender because unlike a non-compliant landlord who sort of ignores us, the banks tend to listen when they get sued.
So the labor negotiations aspect of it, I know there's been some kind of changes between personnel and going forward is the lead negotiator, the law department, is it personnel? How does that work going forward?
So, right. So there has been personnel changes around personnel, and we will be heading into negotiations with the PBA shortly. And I will personally be playing a support role, but the lead negotiator will not be someone from the law department. It won't be me, and it won't be Amanda Harrington, who is our labor lawyer, but Amanda will be at the table.
So,
Are you going to make me the lead negotiator? Not yet.
Go
Okay.
for it.
Maybe next year. There's always.
Go for it.
so what's the law department's role in that then? I mean, the strategic kind of ideas would come from personnel, and you guys would be there for a legal aspect of it, or how does that work?
So we're really a team. So we've been meeting weekly to try to devise our strategy, and it's a combination of operational in terms of what things are going on in the police department that we need to address from an operational perspective in the contract. It's financial. What are things costing us, and what will they cost us moving forward? And the whole process in itself is very legal. I mean, there's as you know, in labor relations, it's a highly regulated area of law in New York State, and advising in terms of sort of the strategy of complying with that law while not committing an improper practice under the Taylor law, or and then just in thinking strategically. So it's not a matter of there's a group of people in the personnel office doing it, and they come to us when they have questions. We're all at the table together, including and the Common Council's involved in that as well. So
The Common Council's involved. Oh yeah.
And then just kind of related to that, just with my kind of background in labor relations, I know typically in the field there's always a lot of times where someone will say like, well, we can't do this because of the union contract. And sometimes that's true, and a lot of times it's not. And I'm just, the law department would kind of be the role there to be able to kind of ferret that out. And I'm just curious if there's any ability that the law department would have to kind of proactively attack that with the resources you have to kind of look at departments and understand what their kind of issues might be.
are you talking in general across the city,
I think
or?
there's probably a general need just to say, to go to departments and say, if you could do whatever you wanted to make this department efficient, what would you do? And then have them discuss what holds you back from being able to implement that. And a lot of times they would say the union contract, and then just to be able to have the law department sit there and say, okay, you're right, you can't do this under the contract, or you're not, and we could implement this unilaterally.
Yep.
But I know that takes time, and I'm just curious if we have the ability to do that with the staff we have now, because my instinct would be that while it would cost an attorney time, you'd probably save a lot more on the other side of it.
So, two parts. So, in terms of negotiations, the only contract we're negotiating right now is PBA, but we are certainly having that exact conversation. What is it that you want to do that you can't do because of the contract? And what is it that you want to do that you're not sure if you can do? And let's look at whether the contract holds you back on that. So, we're absolutely having that conversation. I agree, it's an important, valuable conversation. In terms of contracts that are closed right now, we still, because my prior focus was labor law, I tend to have many conversations with department heads that sound just like what you're saying right now. We have conversations, I want to do this is an inefficiency, what can I do? And we're definitely working with them on that. I, as well as, we do have an attorney in the department who's full-time assigned to personnel and labor relations issues. And she's very busy, I can tell you, partnering with the department heads on those very issues. And when we were negotiating the contracts last year, it was still a very new administration. And so to a certain extent, we had those conversations a bit, but I think that next time we come back to the table with the other unions, it will be a more comprehensive conversation.
Yeah, I just have one question. This is page 123 on the code enforcement, and I don't know if it's for you guys or for the director of budget. The judgments collected 243,000 under 1819. Does that roll back into the general fund? Is it retained by codes? It does go in general fund?
General fund.
All right. So
Councilor President Hudson.
I only have one question, and I don't know, I know you're gonna have to work together with NBD and people on this. We have a 40% rental registry, correct? Or is it higher than
I
that?
think it's lower.
It's lower than that, so legally, because I'm thinking of the Shiner Street fire that didn't register on the rental registry. Is there a way that you're looking legally to be able to get these folks registered?
Yes, in fact, when the Bureau of Administration issues its first violation tickets, they will be rental registry cases. Codes has gone back through this past month and issued letters to all the properties that we're aware that are not compliant with the rental registry, letting them know that if they don't come into compliance, they'll receive a ticket through the BAA. Postcards have gone out. There's been a lot of communication on that end, but those are going to be the focus of the first wave of cases that the Bureau looks at.
Because we have a high rental rate in our city.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you have a concrete number of the rental properties in the city?
I don't, but yeah, codes would definitely be able to provide you with that information.
Councilor Allen.
I'm on page 125. Your temporary services, it looks like it's been reduced. Now it says 2,400 under proposed.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because you guys have full-time staff? Did you hire full-time or? Like, how did
Yeah,
that drop
I'm
happen?
not actually, I'd have to look at what's on that line. The only thing that I'm aware that we use that line for is for law. So we're using free law clerks from the law school mostly. That's why that line is down.
So it's saving us on hiring for part-time.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it isn't impacting the number of attorneys we have, but it's a savings overall.
Okay. And are you at full capacity in your office? I see 0 up here under, I'm on the top.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely.
This line, is that 0?
So, well, we're not at full staff right now. We have 4 vacancies. Next week we'll have 5 because we have someone leaving. We have we're going to have 3 attorney openings and 2 paralegal openings. If anyone knows anyone who's looking, but on page 124, a number of these changes are just because people are moving from one level to another. So when you see, and also in terms of the shift between Assistant Corp Counsel 4 and 5, those are really this. If you look at the salaries for those, let's see here, they're mostly the same. Let's see here. They're not exactly the same, but they're similar lines, it's similar salary ranges. So for some reason, it was an administrative move that I can't recall what prompted it, but it's the same two people, they're just on a different line for some reason.
You said you're at 4 vacancies?
4 vacancies, 5 next
Five
week.
Okay.
Looking for paralegals, right?
2 paralegals, yep,
2 paralegals.
And then what was the other 3 positions?
3 attorneys, 2 litigation attorneys and 1 transactional attorney.
2 litigation, 1 transactional. Y'all hear that, Facebook?
2 litigation,
Mhm.
1 transaction.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you ever have metrics that look at, in relation to the size of the city budget, what percent is paid out in lawsuits compared to other cities? Like, is there some sense of normal? I know that we're a litigious society, so is Syracuse at all an outlier in their direction? Are we pretty normal?
I've not had an opportunity to look at that. I don't know. I could look. We're affiliated with the National Organization of Municipal Lawyers that I could reach out to them and see if there's any statistics on that. You're interested in population versus judgments or versus number of cases?
We can probably look at it. I would be interested in just like size of the budget. So we're at 245 million last year, 252 proposed this year. Other cities, what's their budget, and then what do we pay out? So I guess from you, it would be like, what have we paid out over the last 2 years in general, like total?
Okay. In judgments and settlements? Those don't come out of our budget, but I can certainly work with the budget office to
But it's
to
like
work, to pull that out. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. No, we can look at that.
Last, you had a 3% cut, $64,500. Where would you go if you were influencing where it would come from? I think we have an idea of which finger we would cut off, but what do you think?
Well, there's not, I'm sure everyone who comes here says there's no room to cut.
So on the no
Ours are very fixed costs, right? I mean, we have to have attorneys, we have to pay them.
Definitely.
In terms of the operational, as things like court reporters, we have to pay them.
So the
You know,
professional service line, how about that one? 'Cause, you had an actual 7.1, 18. Then it was much lower adopted or projected. Why are we projected so high?
so there's 2 components of that when you look at it in the law department. So one is SURA and one is outside counsel, so lawyers that we pay to supplement our in-house counsel, workforce. In terms of SURA, we have, this past fiscal year, I moved 2 people off SURA. I think we had 4, now we're down to 2. For the budgeted fiscal year 20, we're moving another person off, so that we'll just have, I think, 1.5 person on the SURA payroll. The really big piece of that is the outside counsel line. It was budgeted for approximately $230,000 for this year, and we are projected to be over $500,000, which is illustrates how impossible it is to predict that number. It's really a function of who decides to sue us and how those cases play out. We had a highly publicized 2-week trial, that really added to that number. I already cut that number. You'll see in the fiscal year 20 proposed final is $395,000. I had earlier asked for $450, and I took most of my 2.5% out of that we were asked to cut already.
Where do you?
Page, I don't know how your pages work.
I think you might have more detail.
I have a more detailed number, right? So,
We only see it at the
we
level
have-
of professional services.
I'm not really answering your question, but I would hesitate to take it out of that line because we have already scheduled 5 trials for this summer. I mean, I've only been here a year, Joe's been here 25 years, and, that's really, really very unusual. And for several of those trials, I mean, we have 4 litigators. We can't do 5 trials with 4 people, so we're gonna have to use outside counsel for that. Trials cost money. They take time.
You
So
have 5 and you have 4 staff people, you have to hire one. Are you guessing which is gonna be the most complicated to use the outside lawyer for the least complicated?
well, we would use the outside lawyer for the most complicated because it would be the most difficult.
But it would be the most money, wouldn't it?
But the more complicated the trial, I'll be frank, we don't have the level of trial expertise that a private firm would have. So if we want to win those cases, it costs money to win lawsuits.
Other questions?
I'm hoping 1 or 2 of those may settle for what I would call a nuisance value, which means it costs us less to pay, but who knows,
Thank you. You are consistently under the 30-minute timeline based on last year, too.
You're welcome.
So that's the end of this hearing, and that's the end. I would, whoever's out there, if we can test all the mics, because if we do this electronic blackboard screeching the whole time, I'm going to go out of my mind. So somebody please check the mics, because I can't handle it.
I think it's the